There is a really good anime out there called Attack on Titan, and I'm not a huge anime fan, but I really enjoyed it, and I recommend people checking it out. I think you can still find it on Netflix. I won't give you the whole synopsis of the show, but there are a bunch of, well, titans running around that appear to have their skin removed and all the muscle and cartilage showing, and it looked really cool. And it just so happens that I've had a Games Workshop Giant in my storage bin, all built and primed and ready to go. Just needed paint. So I decided I'm going to paint up an Attack on Titan Warhammer Fantasy Giant. So that's what we're doing today. And started off with a airbrushed Vallejo Model Air Hull Red over my black primer. And at the moment, I'm just using Vallejo Model Color Leather Brown to roughly block in the areas where the whitish cartilage is going to go. Anyone with medical degrees out there, please don't give me a hard time about things not being anatomically correct, because this is based on a cartoon, and they don't have everything right in the cartoon. I'm trying to follow the cartoon, not a real skinless person. But please keep that in mind. So right now I'm just trying to get a rough idea of where all the white bits are going to go, using a dark color that can be built up upon, but at the moment doesn't show up very well, and that's on purpose. Step 2 is building up the muscly red areas using Vallejo Model Color Flat Red mixed in with the previous Vallejo Model Color Hull Red. And just like with the Leather Brown before, I'm not really trying to paint the muscles at this point. I'm just blocking in the colors where I want them, because that previous Hull Red I'm going to leave well, you'll see when we start building this up, but leave it in the recesses or around the muscled areas. Since this is a flat surface, I'm trying to basically paint texture to it to give the illusion of depth on a flat surface. So especially on the sides of the stomach, trying to create the muscles that are there. And again, this is just blocking it in, not painting the muscle, really defining the muscle areas yet, just slowly building up, because there will be mistakes made. But if we slowly build them up, those mistakes are less likely to appear because they'll be in a darker color, and we put layers over layers and layers and layers and slowly build it up, and things will start appearing as we get later in the painting process. With the muscle areas now blocked in, I can now start texturing in the muscles, and we do that by using the paint a little bit thicker than normal, and I'm painting in the direction that the muscles should be going, just using quick short strokes. So essentially I'm purposely trying to leave brush strokes. At this stage, again, where this is still sort of blocking them in, at each successive stage the muscle areas will be defined more and more, but I'm just trying to get a texture, a rough texture at this point. Again, the important thing is to try to get the muscles textured in the right direction, which is a bit difficult on a project like this, because this isn't, I'm not painting one of the Titans from the show. I'm trying to paint that paint scheme on a big fat Warhammer Giant, so I had to fudge a little bit with some of the muscle areas. For example, the muscles on the back should slope down. I have them sloping up towards the spine. Just because he had so many rolls of fat, it would look weird if I did it the other way. So again, not entirely anatomically correct here. Just a quick interrupt on painting the muscle, because I needed to paint the mouth or the jaw. The Titans on the show have incredibly large jaws. Some of them even have a sort of double set, which I really can't explain, you just have to see it. But the jaw goes all the way around to the cheek, which, well, it does in a real human too, I guess. But I painted just a black line where the jaw or where the teeth are going to go, and then just using a very small number 0 brush with a good tip, painted in the teeth. Very simple, but in case you're wondering what the hell those are later, that's what it is. It's his jaw. For what seems like a fairly complex paint scheme, the ironic thing is the paint palette that I'm using is extremely limited. I'm only using 3 colors here: Hull Red, which we're already done with, Vallejo Model Color Flat Red, and Vallejo Game Color Elf Skintone. And that's the step we're on now, is Vallejo Model Color Flat Red mixed with the Elf Skintone just a little bit. And now we can start seeing the textures starting to come out. And from this point on, again, it's just a repetitive process of adding the muscle texture to the miniature, trying to be in each stage a little bit more careful, putting it on a slightly smaller spot, essentially leaving more room in between all the striations, and trying to use a smaller brush stroke so we can see some of those previous layers and they build on top of each other. And the rest of this is just going to be a repeat of this over and over again. And here we are on the next step. Again, just adding more sunny skin tone, elf skin tone to the previous step. And again, paint's a little thicker than normal because I want to add that texture to it. And I'm hoping you can tell by the brush stroke I'm using, I'm trying to be a bit more careful at this stage, trying to draw more lines in a line fashion than trying to just block in areas. Essentially, I'm defining what I painted previously. First was a big broad area, then a big broad brush stroke, and then a medium brush stroke, and now we're like moving into a finer brush stroke. It's all building on top of that previous layer. And then we apply the final highlight, again just more elf skin tone mixed in with the previous mixture, and adding more highlights to the tops of the muscles, areas where light would catch, not applying it over the whole muscle. And the idea behind this, the whole texturing idea, is to give an idea of something that's not there. It's kind of like the difference between painting a circle on a flat piece of paper or painting a ball. You can just paint a circle easily, but trying to make it look like a ball that has dimension to it, you have to shade it properly and highlight it properly. That's essentially what we're doing here. The belly, for example, is a flat surface, slightly rounded, but there's no muscles to it. I'm trying to paint the idea of he has a fat 6-pack of muscles, and by painting this way through the texture, hopefully that idea comes through. So ideally you won't see that flat rounded belly anymore. You will see the muscles popping out, and that's the idea. Hopefully it works. This stage is a bit of cleanup work. This is Hull Red mixed with a little bit of black, and I'm just trying to do an extra little bit of definition on the muscles, adding a bit more shade to the bottoms of some of them, because again, just like painting anything, it's all about contrast, and if I can add more contrast, I can make those muscles appear to pop. For the cartilage areas, I decided to use Vallejo Model Color Iraqi Sand. Had a few different ideas of directions I can go with that, maybe a bit more yellow or a bit more pink with this color, but in the end I decided to go something that was a huge contrast with the red so it stands out more, because again, I'm not trying to copy a real anatomy here. I'm trying to copy what is essentially a cartoon, so high contrast, for the most part, very bright colors that pop out, and I think the Iraqi Sand worked really well for that. Now, I will tell you that I did have some areas that I needed to clean up and change, because honestly, I did not use the show itself as a reference to paint this model, because trying to get a 360-degree view of the giants in there, the Titans in that show, was really difficult. What I did use were costumes. You can buy bodysuit costumes based on the Titans of the show, and even a few action figures, because I found views of the back and the feet and everything on those. So some of the pictures I found were actually turned out to be more anatomy bodysuits, not ones from the show. People were just putting Attack on Titan to try to boost their sales. So I had to go back and clean up a few areas that I realized weren't in the show. And I just did that with Hull Red mixed with a little black, and slowly closed off some of the cartilage areas, thinned them down where necessary, or repainted them. And then I had to add more muscles to it. The back, for example, that you just saw, had to add some extra muscles that a normal human wouldn't have there, but needed to be filled in. For the cartilage, I just did one quick highlight by adding a little bit of white to the Iraqi Sand. Essentially, that's all I needed. I did add a little bit of shade on the texture areas, essentially just on the head, around the brow and the ears, and that was done by, once it was dry, I just put some Army Painter soft tone wash onto it and called it quits. We are now done with the Attack on Titan portion of this figure, and now we're just working on the Warhammer giant portions of it. And I'm going to skip most of this because, first of all, you saw the cool bits. That's what you came to see once you saw that thumbnail. And secondly, the clothes here are all patchwork, and it's a lot of colors, and it would take an hour for me to go through every single one. However, I tried to keep the colors very muted and solid colors, because painting stripes or polka dots would really detract from the muscle tone. I tried to stay away from reds too, however, I think that was a bit of a mistake. I did use a little bit of flat brown here and there, and it actually worked really well with the muscles. I should have worked in a little bit more slight reddish brown tones and maybe a little orange, because it played off the muscle tone really nice. I will go over the stitching, because that's a bit important, because when it comes to small areas like the stitches holding all his patchwork clothing together, it's really important. You need to make that pop, because they are such small areas. And we do that by first going over all the stitches with an ink wash of black with a little bit of brown in it. And once the wash is dry, each stitch is picked out with Vallejo Model Color Pale Sand. And the stitches need that high amount of contrast so you can see them. If I painted them a dark color, the stitches would just blend in, but again, high contrast means that they stand out and you can see that the clothing is all stitched together. It's very important. I will go over painting the Bone Club real quick for two reasons. First of all, I want everyone to know that when you're painting bone, you do not have to use Vallejo or Games Workshop bone color, whatever Games Workshop calls their bone color. You have options. Bone can be a wide variety of colors, all the way to dark browns to grays or bright whites. That's the first reason. Second reason is that it's important that I don't paint it the same color that I did the cartilage, so I don't want a bright white. So that's the reason why I'm starting with Vallejo Model Color Khaki. And I first base coated that, and now I am mixing in some Vallejo Game Color, I think, is it bone or bleach bone? It's their bone color. And even though, despite what I just said, you don't have to use bone, I almost never use this color for painting bone. I usually use, well, Iraqi Sand or something else, but I already used that on the cartilage, so I need a different color. proceeded to do about, I think, 3 or 4 highlights to the skull, mixing in more Vallejo game color Bonewhite in with each step. And then that's followed up with an ink wash of game color Sepia ink mixed with a tiny amount of black, and just work that into the cracks around the skull or any areas that need just a little bit more shade. The teeth are painted with a mixture of Vallejo Flat Earth mixed with pale sand, slowly mixing more pale sand in at each step, working towards the tip of the tooth. And just want to mention this real quick because if you ask someone what color is bone, they're going to say white. If you ask them what color teeth are, they're going to say white. But you do in reality have a lot of options, different options to paint those things. And here we have what's supposed to be white, the skull, and what's supposed to be white is the teeth, and what's supposed to be white, the cartilage areas on the giant, but they're all 3 different shades of white, so they don't blend all in with each other. So experiment with those colors. Again, don't paint bone the same color every time, don't paint teeth the same color. Experiment and come up with new shades. I just want to mention the beard real quick. I initially started painting it black, which didn't work out too well, so I ended up working all the way up to flat brown, and then I worked in some Vallejo Panzer Aces light rust into that. We're just at the black stage here. And the only reason why I want to mention this because I'm sure someone's going to mention how can a skinless giant have a beard and mustache. Well, I'm pretty sure a skinless giant wouldn't have a ears and a nose either. But again, I'm trying to copy a cartoon here, and in the cartoon they have hair as well, so this isn't reality. And here we are, all done. At the last minute I decided to do a semi-gloss coat over the muscle areas, and my video camera is having a little bit of problem fighting through the sheen, so I'm going to add a few still photos at the end of this video because the colors look a little washed out right now. But it came out pretty well. The one thing I want to mention here is if anyone thinks or says that it doesn't look like a Titan from the show, well, it's not a Titan from the show. What it is, it's an Attack on Titan paint scheme on a Games Workshop Warhammer Giant. And that's a difference I want to point out. For example, if you want to paint a Star Wars themed Space Marine army, you could paint all your Space Marines white and make a Darth Vader black commander and paint all your vehicles gray. That's great. But it's not going to be Star Wars because the figures aren't Star Wars. They don't look like stormtroopers, and just painting them that way won't turn them into that. That's a difference that I just want to mention because this is clearly not a Titan and from the show, and I'm not going to make it look exactly like it because it's not the same thing. It's literally a paint job over a giant. I don't have the physical giant from the show itself to paint. If I had that, then yes, it would be a Titan from the show that I painted. This is a theme, and I don't know if that difference makes sense to you, but it's something I want to point out. If you take a theme from some show and paint it on something else, it's not going to be that thing from the show. It's going to be a theme from that show. So you have to know essentially your limitations of what you can do. Just keep that in mind. Again, it's great to be inspired by something, but trying to get an exact copy when you're painting it on something else doesn't always work. But I'm rambling now. Hopefully that made sense. In the end, I got a cool looking muscly giant, and we'll call it quits from here. Thanks for watching.